Right. Exiting executive session and returning to public session at 9:29 p.m. No action taken in the executive session, no motions, no votes. We will now continue discussion of the central office administrator contracts. And at this time, I will look for any discussion or motions from any of the boards. Mr. D'Agostino.
So I'll make a motion. I'll move to approve the contract of the superintendent of schools and authorize the board chairs to sign the document upon finalization of the terms.
It's a second I see from Gwen for Region 9. Easton, same motion.
Look for the same motion in Easton. I see Jeff making the motion. Thank you, Jeff. And a second from Devin. Thank you, Devin.
Looking to Reading for the same motion.
Make that motion.
John, is there a second? Heather, thank you. Motion is on the table across all three boards to approve the contract with the superintendent. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we will call the question. The motion originated in Region 9, and we'll let Region 9 go first.
Roll call. Cheryl.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Juliet.
Yes.
Gwen.
Yes.
Karen.
Yes.
Mary Lee.
Yes.
Maureen.
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Carries 8-0.
Thank you. Looking to Easton.
Thank you. Jeff.
Yes.
Thank you. Devin.
Yes.
Thank you. Randy.
Yes.
Thank you. Jenny.
Yes.
Thank you. I vote yes. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, John. Calling the question in Reading. Heather.
Yes.
Colleen.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Steph.
Yes.
I vote yes. Motion carries 6-0 in Reading. We'll look for further discussion or a motion with respect to the contract of Dr. Pearson-Ugal. Mike D'Agostino.
So I'll move to approve the contract of the assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction and authorize the board chairs to sign the document upon finalization of the contract terms.
Thank you, Mike.
Second.
Second.
Gwen.
To Gwen. Easton.
For Easton. Look for the motion. I see Jenny first and then Jeff. Thank you.
Same motion in Reading. I see Heather making the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, John. Thank you. Motion is on the floor in all three boards. Any further discussion? If there aren't, we can call the question in the same order again. Todd?
All right. Region 9 calling the question. Cheryl.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Juliet.
Yes.
Gwen.
Yes.
Karen.
Yes.
Mary Lee.
Yes.
Maureen.
Yes.
And Tom, yes. Carries 8-0 in Region 9.
John?
In Easton, Jeff.
Yes.
Thank you, Devin.
Yes.
Thank you, Randy.
Yes.
Thank you, Jenny.
Yes.
And I vote yes. The motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, John. Calling the question in Reading. Heather?
Yes.
Colleen?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Steph?
Yes.
I vote yes. Motion carries 6-0 in Reading. Barring further discussion or motions with respect to the central office administrator contracts at this time, and seeing none, we'll move on to item 4B, which is the superintendent evaluation. And I will again ask Mr. Stinson to lead the discussion.
Thank you. So Todd, Chris, Rydell, and I had a conversation about various evaluation frameworks. I shared this. Actually, I'm saying I shared this, but I don't have it shared on the screen. Bear with me. This Connecticut Superintendent Leadership Competency Framework, which I hope everyone can see now on the screen, has 8 areas. Starting with number 1, develops and implements vision that inspires action and commitment, and then specifically details the kind of work that you would observe if someone were living up to that principle. And we go through each one of these 8 items. When Dr. Harrison shared this with us, I was really impressed with this as a framework, having spent many, many years doing 360 evaluations and looking at different evaluation frameworks. And I found this to be very impressive. Our intent is that we put this framework into a Google form, and you can see we've started that process, that each section gives board members the opportunity to strongly disagree, to strongly agree, that the board chairs would take the output of that and summarize it and discuss. Now, the idea is not that we are putting all 21 reviews or sort of assessments into one sort of master file. Each board will sort of have their own separate file. Each board will have its own separate results, and each board will have its own conversation with the superintendent. But that if we can use a common framework for the assessment, we think there's a benefit. Further, the superintendent will also go through this framework and self-evaluate, which we think has a lot of value. And each section will give the opportunity for people to do free-form feedback as well. If there's anything that's not contained within this that you want to say something on, individual board members will have the opportunity to provide that feedback as well. So are there any questions about the intent of sort of the process we'd like to go through for the evaluations?
John,
Yes.
some of those, I looked at the questions earlier, and some of them are difficult to evaluate based on the sort of the relationship we have, especially this year, just via Zoom.
Yep.
So,
Not observed?
I mean, I would imagine there's some. Are you planning on using all those questions? I would imagine there's some that are not applicable to us, or.
I think that's fair. And I think what we could do is either add an option for you to select, not observed or NA, or we could make it so that you could just skip a question.
Right, without it being a negative factor, because just
Correct.
because I haven't seen it doesn't mean that it isn't being done.
Correct.
So there was a number of things on there that I'm sure they are being done, but have I seen it being done, or do I know where it is in the evaluation process?
Right.
No. Okay.
Yeah, I think there'd be a benefit to having that. I think it's a good addition. I think Mike. Yes, Mike.
All right. I think the framework, the framework document is great. I really like that. I just want us to all be somewhat mindful of the fact that superintendent evaluations are public. So if we're all filling out Google Docs, that's foyable, just so that we're all aware of that. And the other question
there's a point of contention about that, but sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but the other challenge that I see with doing it in a Google Doc, I think it would be very helpful for each board if they have a committee. I know at Region 9 we have a committee. We have 2 representatives who are the evaluation leaders, and I think using the framework for the basis of your evaluation and the questions and the discussions with the board members has great value. I have slight concerns when you do it in a unified way with a doc, because let's just say, and again, I'll just throw something crazy out. Let's just say that each board feels that the superintendent could be a better communicator. And there's different levels. Some boards think they should be a much better communicator. Some things, what happens is now you have all these Google Docs that say your superintendent is not a good communicator. And it looks, in other words, typically when we do these evaluations, we say, the board generally feels the superintendent has done an exemplary job this year. Areas that we would hope for great improvement would be in communications. We understand the challenges of the pandemic year, but blah, 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 blah. And it makes a better finished product, a document that more clearly articulates the feelings of the board rather than a document with questions with survey answers kind of.
Yep.
So that's my only concern. I think the
Yep.
framework is great. I just think we should be mindful of that as we do it.
I totally agree. So the intent would be that the chairs are, so first that the submissions are draft submissions, right? This is not the final evaluation because this is not the form of the evaluation. This is a way for us to get input into a draft evaluation, and that the chairs would take that input and summarize it back to say just what you said, right? The onus would be on us to faithfully summarize the content that's sort of coming out through those surveys. And I think it's really important that we're not hiding if we disagree with what somebody is saying there, that we are able to say in this category or on this question, there was general consensus that you're doing a really good job, but there was one dissenter on that. And that in and of itself can be a really valuable piece of feedback to say, maybe you are doing a good job, but you're not getting credit for it. You're not getting the runs on the scoreboard for that work that you're doing with all constituents. And so, the idea would be that this is not the evaluation. This is the process through which we're gathering the sort of the inputs for that conversation. And Todd or Chris, I don't know if you have anything else to say.
I would say the same, because again, for like Region 9, we'll have 8 different draft inputs with different scores on each of the questions, 8 different free text that we would have to come together as a board and agree this is how we're rating this particular item or the free text items that we want to include in the final version that we would provide the superintendent. So
right. This strikes me similarly to in the past when the chair might send out an email that says, we're preparing the evaluation. Can you please send me your thoughts? And I'll compile all the thoughts into a uniform document. The expectation being that those initial comments are preliminary to the final draft and are preliminary draft documents that are a component part of a final evaluation.
Right, but are draft comments exempt from FOIA like a draft contract would be? I'm not so sure.
Preliminary notes and documents are, but I think that it is fair to say that amongst the 3 chairs, we agree that it is not our intent to have, whether it's through a Google form or another mechanism, the basis for which we are soliciting comments that we will ultimately aggregate into an evaluation to be public documents. The goal is to have them be considered preliminary drafts. And I am totally comfortable going to council and conferring to make sure that whatever the steps are, we are protecting for the interests of everybody involved here, that the only document, to the extent there is one that is FOIable, is the final written evaluation to the extent there is one.
That would be fine. That's great. Thank you.
And I don't know if Dr. Harrison wants to comment at all about either the framework or his view of the process. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I also want to give you an opportunity to be heard too.
Not a co-host.
Oh, everyone lost their rights when they were
unco-hosted. There you go.
I'll keep it very brief. I really like this framework. It's a framework I used before in previous years, and I think it really just captures sort of the broad work of the superintendent. Typically, I'm focused on just a few of those 8 areas, but I do think it is helpful to get feedback on all 8.
So John, I don't think we're looking for any formal
Nope.
action here so much as advisory to the boards that this is what is coming, and we will be holding, each board will independently hold their own evaluations and their own executive sessions over the coming weeks and months to resolve our annual obligation to evaluate the superintendent.
Is there a way for goal setting to at some point be included in this? My experience with performance evaluations is that you establish goals and then measure yourself against the goals. I think it's something that we have missed, in my experience on the board. is there an opportunity for that as we look to the future?
Yeah, I really like that idea. And I think we can, in some ways, interpret, sort of the things that we're saying here as aspirational statements, right? Demonstrates the results and improvement oriented that address, right? Orientation that address, like that is a statement that I think we should be aspiring to, that any superintendent should be aspiring to. And so there is a little bit of, here are the goals we think that should be there, but then there are those sort of more local goals that we would want to, sort of add to this. I would say, it sort of where I work, we have the sort of annual performance evaluation, and we have the mid-year check-in, and oftentimes it's that mid-year check-in where you're establishing those goals and revisiting those goals, making sure that we're making progress towards those goals. And then the sort of year-end evaluation is less about that goals conversation, more just how did you do towards that stuff. So it's not like setting goals. So maybe it's a sort of mid-year, let's talk about, do we have the right goals and are we making progress? And then end of year is, here's your, kind of report card for that. But I absolutely open to that. I think that could work well in the future.
And Colleen, to your point, in the time that Dr. Harrison and John and Todd and I have spent thinking about the calendar and sort of a governance calendar writ large and what the arc of each year looks like, strategic planning and goal setting is sort of a cornerstone of various pieces of that calendar. And I think that it's a goal that is shared by Dr. Harrison also, to make sure that we're laying out what our goals are from a district level and from a building level on a regular basis, so that we know what we're shooting for.
Yep.
So just
We have a time. Oh, sorry, Colleen.
That's okay. My point is just to write it down. I love that the conversation is happening. Now write it down.
So much, Colleen, so much. Here.
And I'll just add on to Colleen in terms of writing it down, right? So the timing too is crucial, right? Because to the extent that I'm assuming that all three districts will identify those building level goals that key off of the overarching tri-district goals, and then everything should cascade down from there, would be my expectation, and even just based on what we've done in past years. So to Colleen's point, yeah, write it down, and then timing would be great, particularly as prior to any budget that's approved by the three different boards.
Anything to add from anybody with respect to superintendent evaluation? If there is not, thank you, John. Thank you, everybody. On to item 5, public comment. Anybody wishing to make comment can raise their hand using the reactions button or the raise hand feature in the participants window on Zoom. Going once, going twice, hearing none. Board member comment.
Thank you to the committees that make all of this work possible. It's a ton of hours, and I appreciate the information that you bring to the board is so complete and thoughtfully done.
Other board member comment? If there isn't any, look for a motion to adjourn. Look at Easton.
I have a motion in Easton. Here, I see Jeff. Do I see a second? I see Randy. Easton, all in favor?
Yes.
1, 2, 3. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Devin. We are adjourned at 9:47 p.m.
Todd, Region 9.
Yep, Region 9, motion to adjourn.
So
Anyone?
moved.
All right, I saw heard Cheryl and saw Karen.
Second.
That's the second, thank you. Any discussion, all in favor? See all hands, 9:48, we are adjourned.
Reading, motion to adjourn. Mike, second. Heather, any objections? Seeing none, we are adjourned, and the joint meeting is adjourned at 9:48.